Tonight, we're checking history's guest list because somebody keeps getting into the discovery while their name mysteriously gets left at the door. The laboratory is full. The equations survived. The breakthrough made the textbook. The awards found addresses just fine. Yet somehow an essential contributor became a footnote. Tonight, we uncover the women behind major scientific breakthroughs. From Lise Meitner and nuclear fission to Rosalind Franklin and DNA, Chien-Shiung Wu changing physics, Katherine Johnson calculating paths into space, and other brilliant minds whose work was sometimes minimized, unevenly credited, or remembered far later than it deserved. But we're going deeper than somebody stole her work. History is rarely that tidy. We'll separate documented exclusion, unequal recognition, collaboration, institutional barriers, and later internet exaggerations. Because restoring somebody's rightful place in history does not require us to manufacture a prettier lie. And that brings us to tonight's missing key. What is missing from the laboratory? Don't answer too quickly. Carry this wisdom until we open the scroll. A discovery has a lineage. A breakthrough has fingerprints. And when history preserves the achievement but repeatedly forgets particular hands, the seeker does not merely stare at what is present. The seeker learns to notice the absence. Tonight, Collective, we're not putting women into history. We're looking carefully enough to notice they were already there. Ahll.
Channeled by your architect musician, 36110, 27 palms of eyes. The golden whisperer, sea star, Devalan see all. Apply the news you can use, truth and accuracy. The real non-bedazzled jewels.
Tonight, we are not inventing secret female geniuses. We don't need to. The documented women are already knocking on the archive door, and some of them brought receipts. Before the laboratory had a door, women have always possessed scientific, mathematical, medical, agricultural, and technical knowledge, but access to formal institutions varied enormously across place and time. So the historical record can become deceptive. If a person cannot attend the university, cannot join the academy, cannot hold the official position, and cannot easily publish under their own authority, then centuries later, somebody searches the institutional records and wonders, where were the women? Beloved, sometimes they were standing outside the institution you just searched. The absence of a name from the ledger does not automatically mean absence of knowledge. But we also must not manufacture accomplishments merely to fill the silence. That's where discernment enters wearing sensible shoes. We follow evidence. And tonight, the evidence introduces us to some extraordinary women. Ada Lovelace, seeing beyond calculation. Meet Ada Lovelace. In the 19th century, Charles Babbage designed his proposed analytical engine, a mechanical general-purpose calculating machine that was never fully constructed during his lifetime. Lovelace translated an article about the machine by Luigi Menabrea and added extensive notes of her own. Inside those notes, she described a method for calculating Bernoulli numbers using the proposed machine. This is why she is frequently described as the author of the first published computer algorithm intended for implementation by a machine. But her deeper insight was even more interesting. Lovelace recognized that a machine like Babbage's might manipulate more than numbers if other kinds of information could be represented symbolically. That idea reaches toward modern computing. The machine wasn't built, the software industry didn't exist, and this woman was already asking what computation could become. That's not merely seeing the machine, that's seeing through it. Now look upward. Henrietta Swan Leavitt worked at the Harvard College Observatory examining photographic plates of stars. She studied variable stars known as Cepheid variables. Leavitt discovered a relationship between the period of a Cepheid's brightness variation and its luminosity. That relationship eventually gave astronomers an extraordinary tool for measuring cosmic distances. Her work helped make later discoveries about the scale of the universe possible. Think about that. A woman studying tiny points of light on photographic plates helped humanity build a ruler for the heavens. And she did much of this work as one of the women historically called Harvard's computers. Yes, before computers were machines, computers were people. Imagine telling your great-grandmother her job title would eventually become something people yell at when the printer refuses to connect. Progress is peculiar. nuclear fission, and the Nobel that passed by. Now things get uncomfortable. Austrian-Swedish physicist Lise Meitner worked for decades on nuclear physics with chemist Otto Hahn. After fleeing Nazi Germany because of her Jewish ancestry, Meitner continued corresponding with Hahn. When Hahn and Fritz Strassmann produced experimental results showing barium after bombarding uranium with neutrons, Meitner and her nephew Otto Frisch developed the physical interpretation explaining that the uranium nucleus had split. They called the process nuclear fission. In 1944, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry was awarded to Otto Hahn alone for the discovery of nuclear fission. Meitner never received a Nobel Prize. Scholars continue discussing exactly how credit should be distributed across the experimental and theoretical work. But Meitner's role in explaining nuclear fission is unquestioned. Sometimes history does not completely erase the woman. It merely moves her name 3 paragraphs down. A sophisticated little shuffle. Rosalind Franklin, the photograph everybody remembers after learning her name. Then we reach Rosalind Franklin. Franklin was a chemist and X-ray crystallographer whose work produced crucial evidence about the structure of DNA. At King's College London, Franklin and graduate student Raymond Gosling produced famous X-ray diffraction images, including photograph 51. Her measurements and analysis were important evidence in understanding DNA's helical structure. James Watson and Francis Crick developed the famous double helix model in 1953. Maurice Wilkins also contributed important experimental work. In 1962, Watson, Crick, and Wilkins received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. Franklin had died of ovarian cancer in 1958. Nobel Prizes are not awarded posthumously under modern rules, so we cannot simply say, they refused to give Franklin the Nobel. History is messier than the meme, but there is legitimate debate over how Franklin's data were shared and used, and how adequately her contribution was recognized during her lifetime. See how truth works? We do not need to exaggerate. The documented story is complicated enough. Mathematics before the rocket left Earth. Now let's visit NASA. Katherine Johnson was a mathematician whose calculations contributed to American spaceflight. She calculated trajectories for early crewed missions and checked computer-generated calculations for John Glenn's 1962 orbital flight. Glenn reportedly wanted Johnson to verify the numbers before launch. Imagine that conversation. We have the new electronic computer. Wonderful. Did Katherine check it? Now we can leave Earth. That's confidence. Johnson later contributed to Apollo missions and other NASA programs, and she wasn't alone. Women mathematicians, including Black women working in segregated facilities during part of NASA's predecessor agency's history, performed crucial calculations for aeronautics and space exploration. They were literally called human computers. Humanity went to space after women checked the homework. There is a family dynamic hidden in there somewhere. Dr. Qiansheng Wu. The experiment that changed physics. Now meet physicist Qiansheng Wu. In the 1950s, theoretical physicists Chengdao Li and Chen-Ning Yang questioned whether a principle called parity conservation always held in weak nuclear interactions. Wu designed and conducted an extraordinarily difficult experiment using cobalt-60. Her experiment demonstrated that parity was not conserved in weak interactions. The discovery changed physics. Li and Yang received the 1957 Nobel Prize in Physics. Wu did not. Her experimental contribution is now widely recognized as essential. The theory asked the question. Wu made nature answer, and Nobel apparently had another appointment. The Matilda effect. There is actually a term related to this pattern. Historian of science Margaret Rossiter coined the expression Matilda effect to describe the tendency for women's scientific contributions to be overlooked, minimized, or attributed to male colleagues. It was named in honor of 19th century women's rights advocate Matilda Joslyn Gage, who had written about women's inventions being overlooked. Now be careful. The Matilda effect does not mean every famous male scientist stole his work from a woman. No, put the conspiracy casserole back in the refrigerator. It means institutional structures and cultural assumptions can influence whose work receives attention, authority, prizes, citations, promotions, and historical remembrance. Credit is social, And society has biases. That should surprise approximately nobody who has met society. Why recognition matters. Some people say, well, who cares who gets credit? The discovery still happened. No, credit matters. Credit determines employment, funding, promotion, prestige, future research opportunities, historical reputation, and who becomes the example children learn about. Recognition is not merely applause. Recognition is currency. If one researcher receives the credit, they may receive the laboratory, the grant, the students, the next opportunity, the biography. Meanwhile, the overlooked contributor gets, thanks, everybody. That's not exactly the same retirement package. Now let's enter the deeper chamber. Many ancient traditions understood creation through complementary principles: receiving and projecting, intuition and analysis, gestation and manifestation, not men versus women. That interpretation is too small. The deeper symbol is balance. Civilizations become distorted when they decide one form of intelligence represents intelligence itself. The analytical mind needs imagination. Logic needs observation. Innovation needs memory. Power needs compassion. Knowledge needs humility. A society that silences half its potential does not become twice as powerful. It becomes half-informed with tremendous confidence, which unfortunately is humanity's favorite combination. The woman behind the man is the wrong metaphor. You've heard the phrase, behind every great man is a great woman. Sweet, but let's upgrade it. Sometimes she wasn't behind him. She was beside him. Sometimes she was in another laboratory. Sometimes she was leading the experiment. Sometimes she was doing calculations. Sometimes she was teaching. Sometimes she was financing the work. Sometimes she was making discoveries of her own. And sometimes she needed the gentleman to kindly step 3 feet to the left because he was blocking the plaque. Women do not need to be inserted into men's biographies to matter. They have biographies. This history is not an invitation to bitterness. It is an invitation to recognition. Men contributed extraordinary things. Women contributed extraordinary things. People across civilizations, classes, races, religions, and cultures contributed extraordinary things. Truth does not require diminishing one person to restore another. If your version of justice requires creating a new group of invisible people, you haven't healed the pattern. You've rotated the furniture. We are trying to enlarge the table, not fight over the same chair. Core lesson. When you hear a woman actually discovered that, but a man stole it, pause. Investigate. Sometimes there is strong evidence of misappropriation. Sometimes there was collaborative work with unequal recognition. Sometimes institutional discrimination shaped who could publish or lead. Sometimes the modern claim is exaggerated. Ask who performed the experiment, who developed the theory, who collected the data, who published first, who had access to whose work, what did contemporary records say, who received institutional recognition, and what changed in later historical scholarship. That is how we honor overlooked women without replacing history with revenge mythology. The archive does not need us angry. It needs us accurate. Now, to every girl who has ever been told she was too loud, too curious, too ambitious, too technical, too analytical, too strange, too serious, too much, good. Learn discipline, develop humility, master your craft, and remain too much for the box that was too small for you. Because somewhere right now, a young girl is asking a question nobody around her can answer. Do not silence her because the question inconveniences the lesson plan. She may be annoying. Let's remain honest. Genius can absolutely be annoying. But answer the question. Give her the microscope. Hand her the telescope. Teach her mathematics. Let her take apart the machine. Show her the archive. And if she discovers something remarkable, learn how to spell her name correctly, preferably before the award ceremony. Remember the women whose names we will never recover. The midwives, herbalists, farmers, craftswomen, teachers, navigators, mathematicians, assistants, laboratory workers, mothers teaching children beneath conditions that never allowed them inside an academy. Not every forgotten woman was secretly a genius. We don't need that fantasy either. Ordinary women carried civilization too. That matters. A life does not need a Nobel Prize to possess dignity. Sometimes legacy is a theorem. Sometimes it is a discovery. Sometimes it is keeping 3 children alive through a winter nobody wrote about. History tends to photograph breakthroughs. Wisdom remembers maintenance. Both built the world. So when we restore these women's names, let us do something more meaningful than placing them on inspirational posters. Let us build institutions where the next brilliant woman does not need historians 2 generations later to explain that she was standing there. Let the recognition arrive while she can hear it. Let the opportunity arrive while she can use it. Let the laboratory door open before somebody writes a memorial about why it should have, because the deepest justice is not correcting yesterday's footnote. It is making sure tomorrow's genius gets her name on the page the first time. The medicine cabinet has ancestors. The remedies modern science didn't invent from scratch.
Universal currency receipt, architect musician 3611027. The graceful whisperer, Devalan seal.
To every soul who made it to the end of this scroll, congratulations. You didn't just watch another video, you trained your attention, exercised your discernment, and invested in the one treasure no one can steal from you: wisdom. Graduation isn't receiving all the answers. It's finally learning how to ask better questions. If today's scroll sparked a thought, healed a wound, challenged an old belief, or simply reminded you that you're not walking this path alone, then pass the lantern forward. Someone out there is still searching in the dark, and your share might be the light they were praying for. Join the collective by subscribing and turn on your notifications so you're there when the next scroll or codex is unveiled. Time has a funny habit of delivering the lesson right when it's needed. The algorithm is simply humanity's latest attempt to organize chaos. Sometimes it even succeeds. Until we gather again, keep your heart soft, your mind sharp, your spirit grounded, and your discernment polished. Question with courage, learn with humility, lead with compassion, walk in wisdom, walk in love. We'll meet you in the next scroll. Ahll.
Until next time, your sea star Kiracy, channeled by 3611027, the beautiful whisperer. Our sea star Devalan seal. Apply the news you can use.
You don't even have to say nothing. I already know. I know.